So, welcome back to Leaders in Labcoats, and this is Series 1, Episode 3. And this is the podcast where we explore what it really takes to lead as a scientist from the inside out. And this particular episode is on what your stress response might be saying about you. Because months ago, I ran a little poll on LinkedIn, and the question was very simple. How do you react under stress? And the options were overthink and procrastinate, withdraw, avoid, or go silent, push, argue, and take control, or people please and try to keep the peace. And only 4 people responded. And if I'm honest, my first reaction was, well, that didn't go well. It flopped. People weren't interested. And then I looked again. And actually, those few responses told me far more than I had anticipated. Because, and here's what the responses were. This is what came in. 2 people said they would withdraw, avoid, or go silent. And one said that they would overthink and procrastinate. Another said that they would push back, argue, and take control. But 0, not one single person said that they were people please. And that final 0 really stopped me in my tracks, because really what I was trying to sort of illustrate to my readers was that, how we respond under stress is usually the 3, 4, or 5 Fs, which is fight, freeze, flight, and then fawn is the one that is associated with people pleasing. And because in my work with women scientists who've stepped into leadership roles, people pleasing is one of those most common. And I'm not saying I don't see the others, I see those too frequently, but this one seems to be the least recognized of the stress responses that I see. And I mean that as not recognized by the people who are experiencing, because no one thinks that that's what they're doing, because the behaviors associated with people pleasing might not be recognized as such. Because we'll say things like, I just want to be supportive. I don't want to seem difficult. I'm trying to keep the team together. Or it's not really a big deal. I'll just do it myself. I'll just take it on myself. And so they're not really lying. They genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. But underneath that is something else. And it is a fear, because all of these are fear, right? There's a fear of conflict, a fear of being disliked, a fear of being judged, or a fear of not being good enough, a fear of not being competent or considered or perceived competent. And so when they're in stress, they step in, they try and smooth things over, they say yes when they want to say no, and they swallow their frustration. It's a survival mechanism, one that most people aren't even aware of. And honestly, I get it. My own go-to response under stress is silence, although I have been known to do all of the others as well. For me, the fight response comes up when I have been through all the other ones. It's my last resort. For someone else, it might be over preparing or pushing harder and harder. And these are different faces of really the same fear. And that fear is, what happens if I'm not in control of how I'm perceived, of what people are thinking of me. And most of the women I work with were promoted because of their scientific brilliance and their technical excellence, not because of their skill with people. And we discussed this on my podcast with Lauren Stevenson in episode 2. Because we were never really trained for that team tension, the performance issues, or difficult colleagues. We go to the training courses, we read the books, we go to workshops. Often, we feel that they're not very relevant to us. And we learn the theory, but really when the pressure hits, we default to those old unconscious habits. Because stress doesn't care what we know or what we've learned. What it does is reveal what we believe in, and we revert back to those behavioral patterns that are familiar and comfortable, even when they're not really our best course of action. And if deep down you believe that speaking up might damage your reputation, your relationships, your sense of self, then of course you'll go quiet, of course, you'll take on more work rather than risk being seen as uncooperative. Or, of course, you'll push harder, hoping that effort will fix what courage won't. And that's why I love doing what I do and why I do this work, because leadership really isn't about never being stressed. It's about recognizing your patterns under pressure and learning to respond differently, not just react. Because even the most zen of leaders have their breaking points. But those deviations from the model that you want to be doesn't mean that you are a failure or that you're broken, because we all do unskillful things under pressure at some point in our lives. But these moments do not define us as leaders. We are not our worst moments. And yet most women I know live in that space. They kind of dwell on their worst moments. But you're a brilliant scientist doing your best in a system that rarely prepares women for those emotional realities of leadership. And that's where I want to bring that out into the open with my coaching. So if you're ready to stop surviving it and start leading it, let's talk. So thanks for listening to this episode of Leaders in Labcoats. And if it struck a chord, please share it with a colleague who might need to hear it today. And remember, stress doesn't define you, how you meet it does. This is Linda Terry. This is Leader in Labcoats. Until next time.